What do Steven Seagal, Gordon Ramsay, and Jimi Hendrix all have in common? These big names may be known for their mark in the industry, but they have dark secrets that fans were shocked to discover. The lifestyle of fame and riches some of these celebrities are known for came at an unexpected cost. These big names will tell people that they achieved their status through their talent, ambition, and hard work. Now, we're not denying that any of that is true. These are some of the biggest talents in the business, but each celebrity we're going to cover in today's video had connections to the criminal underworld, and these connections almost became deadly. In today's video, we're going to cover some of the most bizarre tales of celebrity near-death experiences. When the glamour of fame combines with the dark underworld of the Mafia, danger looms around every corner. Even the most famous celeb isn't safe from the dangers of organized crime. Let's kick off our list with action star Steven Seagal and his brush with the Gambino family. Steven Seagal was one of the biggest action movie stars of the 1990s. These days, the actor is known for his ties to Vladimir Putin and training in the special forces. One might think that he's just as tough as the characters he's portrayed on the big screen, but one run-in with the Mafia proved otherwise. If you look up Steven Seagal's resume on the Internet Movie Database, you'll notice he's made some really good career decisions. After all, that's how he became a household name. But behind closed doors, he has made some questionable ones. During his heyday, Seagal was working with producer Julius R. Nasso, who produced several of the actor's top-grossing films during his run. Allegedly, fame got to Seagal's head and he didn't think twice about breaking a contract. Well, this was a $60 million contract that included 4 films. What Steven Seagal didn't know about Nasso was that the producer had some very important connections, and he was planning on calling them in for some help. Yes, Nasso had connections with the Gambino family. He arranged a little setup to scare the actor. In 2001, Steven Seagal was given a surprise when mobsters forced him into a car. They soon learned that his tough guy image was just an act. Who would have thought an actor was only pretending to be a character when the camera was rolling? These mobsters brought the actor to a restaurant to extort him. They expected the action star to put up a fight, but he was just a regular guy who was scared of the mob, like everyone else would be in that situation. He paid up, roughly $700,000. But the Mafia wasn't going to get away with it. What was Steven Seagal's revenge? Well, he went to the FBI and ended up getting a guilty plea from Nasso. Next on our list is Fats Waller. He was a very popular jazz musician and comedian in the Roaring '20s. This entertainer had a lot of fans. On one eventful night, he learned that one of the biggest criminals in the US was willing to risk it all in order to see him perform. Fats was playing a show at Chicago's Sherman Hall. He felt a pistol pushing into his back, and next thing the performer knew, he was being kidnapped and forced into a car. Fats was terrified for his life and had no idea what was going on, but he was brought inside an exclusive party and directed towards a piano. As he was put in front of the piano, he was instructed to play. At this point, he wasn't going to argue. He obeyed the orders of the men with the gun. Fats played a song and began to observe the crowd around him. People were happy and enjoying his performance. They clapped and seemed excited to see him play. That's when he noticed one very familiar face in the crowd, Al Capone. It was the notorious mobster's birthday, and he wanted to see his favorite performer. Fats was paid $100 per song performed. He ended up staying at the celebration for a couple of days, was treated very well, and made thousands of dollars. The Rolling Stones are one of the biggest rock legends in the world. They were stoked to play at the Altamont Free Concert in 1969, but they knew they needed extra security. So, who better to hire than some of the toughest guys in the US, the Hells Angels? Meredith Hunter was a young black man who attended the concert. He noticed the Hells Angels and how bad the commotion was getting. There were several fights breaking out, and these gangsters had no problem using violence to settle them. It was really difficult to see the show, so Meredith attempted to climb a speaker in hopes of a better view. He was approached by several of the Angels who were ready to fight. Meredith was carrying a gun for protection. He pulled it out and pointed it at the Angels, hoping it would scare them off. However, things escalated and one of the bikers ended up stabbing him. They blocked him off so he was unable to get medical attention. By the time he got past them, it was too late and he died. The Rolling Stones were not prepared for how violent and out of control the Hells Angels were at that concert. Mick Jagger publicly spoke out about how disgusted the band was by the incident and refused to work with them again. This offended the Hells Angels, who felt used by the rock band. Years later, it was discovered by the FBI that the bikers had a plot to take out the lead singer. They had a boat ready and were going to ambush him at a vacation home. Luckily for Mick and his family, a storm foiled this disastrous plan. Mafia stories have been key plot points for blockbuster movies. From John Gotti to Frank Lucas, all the big names have had films delve into their activities. So mobsters should just accept this, right? Well, we wouldn't be making this video today if that was the case. In 1992, the crime drama American Me was released. This was Edward James Olmos's directorial debut, and to be fair, it didn't do very well at all. Not a lot of people went out to see it, and it didn't get a lot of media attention. That was until the Mexican Mafia discovered that it was based on them, and there were some key scenes they didn't like. Let's just say some of these scenes were too inappropriate to discuss on this channel, and they were heavily based on fiction. According to an article we read on The Grunge, actor Danny Trejo tried to warn Olmos of the trouble this movie would cause. He was familiar with this gang and the way they operated. Certain scenes in the script were bound to cause problems, and that's exactly what happened. After production, Olmos began receiving death threats. Two former gang members, Charlie Brown Manriquez and Manuel Rocky Luna, provided Olmos with information and expertise to build a story. Both of these men were shot to death in Mafia assassinations. Ana, the gang lady Lizarraga, was also killed by members of the mob for consulting with the filmmakers. 7 other people who took part in the production of This American Me were killed in what was believed to be Mafia hits. A lesson to be learned here is to never make a movie about some of the most dangerous criminals if you're not ready to face their retaliation. Jimi Hendrix was one of the most popular rock icons of the mid to late 1960s. Unfortunately, this rock star had a bit of a drug problem, one that led to his untimely death at the age of 27. Drugs have a way of getting people into trouble, especially if those people are rich and famous celebrities. One night, Jimmy was trying to score some drugs at a club. Some Italian mobsters were made aware of this and saw it as a prime money-making opportunity. However, they weren't going to make a profit from selling drugs. Instead, they offered him free drugs and lured him to a house in a city where they held him hostage. Jimmy was friends with a drug trafficker named John Roberts. Many people suspected him of playing a role in this kidnapping, but John was determined to find out what happened to his friend. He made a few phone calls to find out who was at the club that night and tracked down Jimmy's kidnappers. Now, John Roberts wasn't a man to mess with. The men that kidnapped Jimmy weren't the brightest crayons in the box either. Once John threatened them, they let the rock star go. Jimi Hendrix was only held captive for 2 days, and he was allegedly so high that he had no idea he had been kidnapped. Jackie Chan is known for his talents as one of the leading kung fu movie stars in the world. Many action movies throughout the 1990s focused on the Chinese triads. However, Jackie Chan was one of the famous faces who spoke out about the violent nature of the gangs. Unfortunately for the megastar, it led to extreme bullying from the triads. For a while, Jackie Chan only felt safe when he was in the US. Jackie Chan publicly spoke out about some of the instances he faced when he traveled to China. He even said that at one point, the gang members opened fire on him when he got off an airplane. These random attacks were enough to scare anyone, but Jackie Chan wasn't going to allow the gang members to scare him out of China. He began to carry guns on him at all times when he was in the country. There was one incident in particular that caught a lot of media attention. Jackie Chan was eating outdoors at a restaurant. A group of approximately 20 gang members showed up and surrounded him carrying melon knives. Jackie Chan pulled a gun on them for self-protection, but this allegedly wasn't the only weapon he had. He was also hiding 2 more concealed guns and 6 grenades. A police investigation was warranted on Jackie Chan for his claims of carrying these weapons, but the case was dropped due to lack of evidence. The next story on our list is one of a forbidden romance. Sammy Davis Jr. was a popular performer in the 1950s and 60s. While he could have swept any woman off of her feet, there was one particular lady who caught his attention, Kim Novak. The two met in 1957 at a Chicago nightclub, and it was love at first sight. Harry Cohn was running Columbia Pictures, and this Hollywood mogul had one of the meanest reputations in the industry. Harry was responsible for making Rita Hayworth a star. There was only one problem with his relationship with Rita. She fell in love easily and got married each time. Every time that Rita got married, it took her away from work. This angered Harry, and he needed a new starlet to take her place, and Kim Novak was the lady for this role. So when Sammy Davis Jr. and Kim Novak's fling started, Harry Cohn was ready to squash it immediately. In his eyes, this romance was bad publicity and it would distract Kim from her career. Harry wasn't messing around when it came to putting an end to things. He made a threat to Sammy Davis Jr. that wasn't to be taken lightly. Sammy was instructed to leave Kim and get another woman within 48 hours. There were enough stories about Harry and his Mafia connections for Sammy to know he wasn't messing around. The Mafia may not have had to come out to play this time, but this short-lived romance shows how horrifying their impact was. Now, you likely expected famous actors and musicians to be on a list of celebrities who had brushes with the Mafia, but one famous person you likely didn't expect was a reverend. But the next story on our list is Reverend Al Sharpton. Back in the 1980s, the Reverend was very vocal about how black promoters should play a bigger role in the industry. This caught backlash, and he was threatened by some thugs. Al Sharpton went to the FBI about this incident. This is when they discussed a plan to have the Reverend work as an informant. He would continue to interact with Mafia members and record all of the threats that they made. Sharpton has a lot of ties in the music industry, and many of these ties had mob connections, like Morris Levy's connections to the Genovese family. There has been a lot of controversy surrounding Al Sharpton's role in this case. Many believe that he double-crossed Mafia members that he knew from when he was working in the music industry. However, Al insists he was never friendly with these men. He claimed that during the 1980s, it was nearly impossible to work in that industry without meeting Mafia associates. Nearly every successful musician at the time had ties. While some people believe that Al Sharpton had a goal to bring these men down from the beginning, he claims revenge was not the case at all. In his words, he was simply respecting and cooperating with the FBI. A celebrity doesn't have to have Mafia ties to get themselves in trouble. Let's take celebrity chef Gordon Ramsay, for example. When Gordon was traveling, he learned about shark fin soup. This is a delicacy that can sell for around $100 per bowl, but it's also an inhumane practice that puts sharks at jeopardy of going extinct. Disturbed by what he saw, Gordon connected with the Shark Trust and became a supporter of their Stop Shark Finning campaign. He also started working on a documentary called Shark Bait that was released in 2011. This documentary exposed the inhumane practice of shark finning. But his passion for helping sharks came at a cost. Local gang members who make a lot of money from finning wanted to put an end to this documentary, and there was only one way they knew how. One day when Gordon and his crew were in Costa Rica, they became surrounded by gang members. The chef and his crew were held at gunpoint. Things were getting scary, but luckily for them, police arrived on the scene to break things up. Gordon was able to continue his documentary unharmed. The last story on our list brings us into the criminal underworld of London. Ronnie and Reggie Kray were two murderous brothers who had a strong grip on London's crime scene. Some would even say they were more feared than the Ripper. So, what did these guys have to do with the Beatles? Well, in the 1950s, the Kray twins were working along with a local gangster, Jay Murray, who had connections to the Beatles' manager, Brian Epstein. Brian was able to work with gangsters to have bands perform at entertainment venues for all cash. The key to this is that the money was untraceable. More money for the gangsters, Brian, and the band. Now, the Kray twins weren't the most logical thinkers. Reggie was neurotypical and Ronnie was schizophrenic. With Brian's gambling habits and the Beatles' enjoyment of adult entertainment, this crew was a blackmailer's dream, and the Kray twins wanted a piece of it. Allegedly, the twins hatched a plan to take over the Beatles. Brian attempted to explain that this was one of the biggest rock bands in London. They required more work than anyone could imagine. Ronnie was angered about this response and wanted to show he meant business by any means possible. He even grabbed a random man and rammed a nail in his cheek. The twins' attempt to take over the Beatles didn't pan out. They learned on their own just how difficult it is to manage some of the world's most famous rock stars, especially as the bandmates got themselves in trouble. Ronnie and Reggie did, however, continue to extort Brian for money and set their sights on controlling a less popular band called the Kinks. This wraps up our video on 10 celebrities who were nearly killed by the Mafia. From Steven Seagal getting scared straight to the Beatles nearly getting taken over, each of these stories was crazier than the next. Which one surprised you the most? Let us know what you think in the comments below. Thank you for tuning in and staying with us to the end. Today's video shows how nobody is safe from the impact of the mob, no matter how much money or popularity they have. When celebrities mess with the wrong people, even they have to pay the consequences. That's all for now. We have more stories of Mafia lore to share with you. Make sure you hit like, share, and subscribe to see more from Mafia Mystique.